So to continue our coverage of Avengers Armageddon, we've now reached part 17 on the playlist with Avengers Armageddon issue 1. So yeah, it's been quite the build up. And now with David Colton returning with his new powers, we are now one step closer to finding out whose powers Wolverine gave him, even though I believe the community has figured that out already. But nonetheless, we've got a lot to talk about here. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. So right away, this starts out with General Ross, who's coming out of his Gamma Charger, where he's like, weakness. It feels like all my life I fought against it. Weakness in people around me, in our institutions, in America's actions on a global stage. We should have stopped Doom years ago. Instead, he imprisoned me, took over the world for more than a moment, and America sat to the side again. So I stepped in, took Latveria, made it safe and ready for democracy. And now everything the General's talking about here is a combination of what we saw from Incredible Hulk issue 800, where Doom took Thunderbolt Ross as his prisoner, heading into the One World Under Doom event, where Doom captured Ross to use his military strategic mind, heading into and during One World Under Doom. Because like we saw after this, when Doom became Sorcerer Supreme, and a majority of the world was okay with him leading it, Thunderbolt Ross had no idea what was going on in the outside world until months later, when he finally broke out of Doom's think tank prison, which was very difficult for him at the time, since Doom kept Ross from any radiation he could use to charge up and Hulk out, which included sunlight, which is why more recently we often see the General with the Gamma Charger, so he doesn't run into that issue again and he has the Red Hulk ready. But when Thunderbolt Ross broke out and he finally discovered that Emperor Doom was leader of the world, he was disgusted that the United States had just bent the knee without any pushback. And at the time, this became the beginning of Thunderbolt Ross taking things into his own hands, which is why he took it upon himself to plant the United States flag in Latveria at the end of One World Under Doom as a way to claim Latveria before anyone else could, because he wanted to avoid some other person stepping in and becoming the next Doom, which then led to Dungeons of Doom, where he took it a step further by personally getting involved in the fight over the powerful artifacts that Doom left behind. And like we saw when that ended, he did not leave empty-handed. But even with Thunderbolt Ross trying to avoid another person rising to power and taking Doom's place, it still ended up happening, heading into the Doom's Shadow event, when Marius Wolf, who's an old friend of Steve Rogers and David Colton, rose to power. And with Ross not being happy with how this was handled, with the US not allowing him to step in, at least not to the capacity that Ross wanted to, but with the United States and a number of members of the UN being okay with Nick Fury and the new SHIELD organization handling this, only for it to go left in a number of ways, with him finding a mass grave, having Steve Rogers tell him that he's fighting alongside of rebels, along with the discovery of a new powerful weapon that Doom had left behind. And that's where Ross was like, okay, that's enough. I've heard everything I need to hear. Now I'm gonna handle this my way. So he rained down Hulks in Latveria. And this was General Ross doing what he believes America should have let him do a long time ago. Because even when this happened, he was doing this for the US. And with him taking Latveria again, he also managed to get his hands on one half of Doom's secret weapon. And by the time we get to Avengers Armageddon issue 1, General Ross is using some of what Doom left behind to take what he's been doing to the next level. And he goes on here after talking about taking Latveria and making it safe and ready for democracy. Because he goes on like, they excoriated me, my own country. They don't understand. Doom left me a gift, a weapon that ensures victory, ensuring global democracy, ensuring a world of freedom. And following this, we see what was formerly known as Doomstat in Latveria. It's now been changed to Democracy City of New America. And now as the General's being filled in on what's been going on both near and far, when he asks if there's been any problems with the local population, he's told no sir. After Salvation's defeat, any potential rebel groups reconsidered their options. Most have fallen in line. Then when he's told that the Secretary of State has been trying to contact him, Ross is like, I bet he has. Because the last conversation we saw between General Ross and Secretary Brooke, he was telling the General no to the whole proposal of taking Latveria. And on top of that, he even told the General that he's being reassigned. So fast forward to now, I'm sure he's definitely got some words. But Ross is also told here by one of his captains, the White House is unhappy with your occupation and are distancing themselves from us. They're supporting the UN, putting together a subcommittee to discuss military action, which for Ross, this is precisely the problem that he's had with the US and the world. Because they got to put together their subcommittees and have discussions, which is why monsters like Doom get the jump on them. So as he tells his men to raise their new flag, he goes on to say how the problem is being all talk and no action. And he says here, America was started by a group of patriots, banishing a king and installing proper democracy. It's time for the dream to be felt by everyone. It's time for a new America. And now this sends us right over to Reed Richards, who's with the Madam Secretary General, as they're listening to a speech that was broadcasted from General Ross earlier, where he says here the world suffered under the dictator Victor Von Doom in his eradication of human rights, the right to assembly, to democracy. This would have been more tragic if the world actually had those rights to start with. Even before Doom, half the world suffered under authoritarian regimes, or regimes masquerading as democracies, while free countries stood by and did nothing. Well, enough is enough. My name is General Thaddeus Ross, and I'm going to give you back your power, your democracy. So now, after watching this, the Madam Secretary General goes on to tell Reed how this was live an hour ago, and how at the same time their satellites picked up activity, with troops moving south in Latveria towards Simkaria. So for one, this is unusually fast activity, but just based on what the general's doing, Reed is like, okay, so he's not just going for clear dictators, he's going after hybrid regimes, countries that haven't progressed as quickly towards full democracy as he'd like. But when Reed gets ready to offer the help of the Fantastic Four, Madam Secretary General's basically like, you know what, I'm gonna stop you right there. And she tells Reed that she called him here so she can order him to do nothing. And with where she takes this, I imagine that I'm gonna need to put her on the list of people who look at Reed Richards and say, this man had the nerve to call himself Mr. Fantastic. Because she tells him here, him and his self-described heroes are part of the problem. And she tells him, like, I'm sure you all are good people, and you've done good things for all of us, some things I might not even know about. But the world, the normal world, is tired of standing on the sidelines as people with powers do whatever they want, while the human casualties keep piling up. And even when Reed tries to get a word in and tell her that they're just here to help, she's just like, aliens regularly rain down on this city, and I'd bet anything we wouldn't even be on their radar without your existence. And I'm also certain that Doom's takeover was the direct result of your history with him and his ongoing ego clash with you. I'm going to advise the Security Council that the UN needs to hit Ross and his followers hard, that people, real people, need to tackle these superpowered menaces and take back control of our destinies, which to her is the bottom line here. Because to her, these quote-unquote heroes are unelected people playing God, and they need to step out of the way so that the officials who were elected by the people can take it from here. And after laying this out, she tells Mr. Fantastic to get out of her office and let her do her job. And I can just imagine for Reed, a lot of this is taking him back to a conversation that he had with Steve Rogers over 10 years ago, when at the time, Steve, who was basically fresh out of the ice, got his first mission to go after Latveria's new leader, Victor Von Doom. So with doing a little research, it led him to Reed Richards. And even back then, when Reed offered for the Fantastic Four to help Steve, Steve told him that that's a no-go, because after coming back, he's learned that the world has changed, with superheroes being the new atomic bomb. So yeah, based on what we saw in the 2025 Captain America series, I wouldn't be surprised if Reed was experiencing a bit of deja vu here. But after this, when we go over to Steve Rogers, who's currently in a coma, which is a direct result of what we saw in Captain America issue 11, when General Ross took matters into his own hands, with him dropping into Latveria for a violent takeover, which resulted in a castle turret landing on Steve's head. So as it stands, Steve is actually in hell with the real Doom, who now wants Steve to join him in a fight against Mephisto, kicking off another story that we'll be covering soon. But in the here and now, with Steve in his coma and Bucky at his side, Sam comes to let him know that it's time to meet with the others at Stark Tower, where now Reed's letting everyone else know that the UN basically wants them all to stay out of it. And Carol Danvers really calls it like more directly for what it is, because the UN is really telling the heroes either sit back or you're the enemy too. And what's funny to me right here is how Namor's just like, the biases of your United Nations have never been hidden from Namor, because they've rejected Atlantis a number of times. So for a moment, he's speaking from experience when he says the UN is terrified of their powers. But the conversation quickly shifts when Sam and Bucky get there, because the others know they went to check on Steve. But I feel like if they hadn't arrived just now, Namor would have turned this whole thing into a speech. And just after Bucky and Sam get there, Peter arrives. And he's like, is this a meeting for Heroes Anonymous? My name is Spidey and I'm addicted to getting blamed for bad guys doing bad things. Then he's like, sorry Ben, I joke when I'm nervous, or sad, or anxious. And Ben's just like, you're never not joking. And Peter's basically like, exactly man, I'm stressed out. You got a cigarette? But no, as they head in, Vision tells the others that Tony said he wants them to meet him inside. And the only other thing he told Vision is that he's working and watching. Because now Tony's getting ready to tell them about his new Iron Alert system. Because if you guys remember, leading up to this, we've seen Tony just mad tired. And at one point, Steve was like, man, Tony, you been getting any sleep? Well, yeah, this is a huge part of what Tony's been working on. But when he tells him that he's been working and watching, Johnny's like, what videos are you watching with this thing? Can I try it? And Tony, of course, says no, because it's not made for watching videos. But even if it was, just based on Johnny's taste, that would have to be a hard pass. Like, you ain't about to throw that in my algorithm. But Carol Danvers gets it right off the bat, because she's like, it's for everything, isn't it, Tony? So Tony tells them Carol gets it. After Doom, I was mad at myself, at us, for letting it happen. We should have seen him coming. So since then I've been watching, evaluating threats, so we can get to them before they turn into another Doom. And that's where Reed's like watching everyone. Tony, the invasion of privacy alone. So Tony tells him it's not like that. The Iron Alert system has safeguards, so I can't watch anyone unless it deems them to be a genuine problem. It sifts through the data away from human eyes and just gives me impending threats. And that's where Ben's like, well, we already know that Ross is an impending threat. And that's when Tony tells them that there's more to it, because he's been watching Ross's moves. And he's like, they're perfect, with a high degree of future success in taking the entire planet and beyond. He's using something that makes him incredibly dangerous. Predictive technology is my guess. The UN thinks they can take him on, but they haven't realized that with his current strategies, he's already won. And now as soon as Tony says this, they get an alert, which then sends us 30 miles north of Indiana Simcaria, where right now these guys aren't expecting Ross to actually show up. And they're like, even if he does, we got something for him. Only for Ross to pop up in the sky coming down with this team of Hulks who are ready to drop down on their heads. And now following this, we find Tony and the others in New Orleans, asking the X-Men to join. But Rogue puts it perfectly here, because she tells them she understands that they don't want another Doom running around. But anytime mutants get involved, they're the ones who get it the worst. Because I could just imagine if all the X-Men join in, the next thing you know, the UN's going to be like, you know what? Orcus might have been on to something. But aside from this, the X-Men are already dealing with enough. So when Rogue asks if Tony tried talking to Cyclops, and Tony's like, yeah, well, Carol did, and she basically got the same answer. But then this is where Logan chimes in, saying how he's heard rumors about S.H.I.E.L.D. being back, so he asks where's Fury now? And what Bucky tells him is much like what we saw before in the Cap series, because he's like, S.H.I.E.L.D. is Fury now. And he's on his own mission looking for firepower in case things go sideways. Because like we saw, Fury's keeping the new S.H.I.E.L.D. small and tight, as he would say, with him just hiring mercenaries to do what they're paid for and then just go on about their business. And in a way, this is him trying to avoid S.H.I.E.L.D. getting compromised again. But at the same time, like we saw, this new method isn't exactly perfect. But then Logan goes on to tell Bucky and the others that he met a guy recently, former soldier, who just got an upgrade. His heart's set to do right, and he's got a big power set. And that's where Tony's like, how big? And Logan just tells him, big. Then when we go back to New York, we head to the Security Council chamber of the UN, where the majority have voted to use all necessary means to stop the invasion of countries by the terrorist group New America, effective immediately. And now when Amara reaches out to T'Challa to give him the update, they're both with it. And he tells her countries have a right to defend themselves against invasions, and Wakanda is no exception. And I gotta say, maybe it's just me, but I'm kind of getting See Wakanda and Die vibes here. Because man, I remember when we covered that as part of Secret Invasion, at the time it was like bump what's going on everywhere else, Wakanda's not having it. But yeah, we'll see where this goes, because if we see Ross go after Wakanda, in a way it'll show us what new plans Doom already had, after Doom War and Blood Hunt. Because after the Doom Shadow event, the plan we see General Ross moving forward with, it's heavily based on using resources that Doom left behind. So naturally, we're going to get glimpses of things that Doom at least considered doing. But at this point, after quickly overthrowing the capital of Simcaria, Ross tells the others that they're going to head towards the southern cities, and after that, on to Serbia. But even now, when he sees the Simcarian forces retreating, Ross is like, this means we need to move on to the next phase. And when this is followed immediately by another incoming attack, Ross continues because he expected this. And he's like, that next phase is where we take down the world's armies. Because again, the UN thinks they can stop him, but Ross is ready. And now after this, when we head over to the Pentagon, we see a very familiar person just walking up to the gate like it's nothing. And the security officers are like, buddy, I'm not going to say it again. And like, we need to see those hands, pal. Only for this guy to keep moving. Like, he ain't worried about none of that. And this guy is none other than Major David Colton, or former Major, I should say. But he just walks right past these guys, tears the gate open with his bare hands. And I mean, he just goes on to stroll through a barrage of bullets like it's raindrops. And now, if you're not familiar with David Colton, I have a link in the description to his full origin, with him becoming a soldier after September 11th, with him being selected to become the next Captain America. And when that story came to an end, he returned in Wolverine Weapons of Armageddon. And that was the story where Mr. David Colton got a huge upgrade. Because when David was injured badly, and mind you, he could have avoided this had he picked up a shield, but he didn't pick up the shield. He didn't believe he deserved it. But after getting injured badly, this dude was on his way out of here. So Logan took one of the Maker's origin boxes that was almost used by this company called Prime Warrior, who wanted to duplicate what was inside and make an army of them. But at the time, Logan ended up giving this power from the origin box to David, saving his life. But as it stands, we don't know whose powers were in that origin box. So we gotta wait to see that down the line. But at the time, all we really knew is that he could fly and build cabins really fast. But ever since then, I've noticed you guys went from the Sentry theory to believing that he has the powers of Hyperion, And I gotta say, Hyperion is way more likely, because there was a sentry on Earth 6160, but things didn't end well for him. But as David is making his way deeper into the Pentagon here, these guys are doing scans to figure out who it is, and one of these dudes is like, he's one of ours, David Colton, Super Soldier Program of 01. And that's where Dr. Seraph is like, Colton? Oh God. Because Dr. Seraph was the scientist who handled David Colton's super soldier procedure. And even back then, there was this whole thing of guaranteed heart failure. Because David wasn't the only one who underwent this process. He just lived the longest. So yeah, fast forward to now, you can imagine why Dr. Seraph is a little nervous about David Colton barging in here. Because not only has he lived past his life expectancy, but dude's a lot stronger than the doctor remembers. But as soon as David gets here, Carol and Sam show up. And right away, Carol Danvers, she's basically like, he's reaching! So she goes for the attack. Now David tries to let them know that he didn't come here to hurt these guys. But Carol's not trying to hear that. She's on some suspects trying to flee. While on the flip side, you got Sam who's like, hey, okay, this is Carol, I'm Sam. Despite her blasting you, we're here to talk. But before you know it, Carol, she done grabbed David and boomed through the roof with him. Because her plan is to take him down by force and bring him in for questioning. Only for David to effortlessly bring her rampage to an end. So he just sends her back down to the ground at a high velocity. And he tells her, I'm not a liar. I don't want to hurt these people. I'm here to save them by shutting down these super soldier programs. So what happens to me doesn't happen to anyone else. And when Sam tosses his shield at him, David just catches it. And for a moment, it's almost like, hey, man, please don't super throw that back at me. But Sam goes on to tell him here, we want to protect people too. But this isn't the way, David. We need your help. Help stopping a monster who's tearing through Europe. And that's where Logan steps up telling David that he's a hand grenade tossed at ants. And he's like, we're looking to toss you at a real enemy. This is Avengers level, Colton. You were a hero once. Time to suit up again and make an actual difference. And when Colton's like, but these people, what they've done. And Logan's like, then smash it all and come with us. I don't give a duck. And Sam's just over here like, hold on, man, what you saying? And Logan wasn't playing. He's like, man, with everything they put him through, guys earned it. And even now, Carol is like, are we still recruiting this guy? Only for David to go on and destroy what he came here to destroy. Because, who's going to stop him? And he tells him it's better to have me with you than against you. And that's where he's like, okay, Logan, tell me, what's my next target? Because now he's ready to join the squad. But then it's here where we get a really brief but really good moment between Bucky and Namor. Because for a moment here with everything that's going on, Bucky's like, does it ever end? And between these two guys, they fought side by side before, as invaders. So they're not strangers to war and what comes along with it. But to Bucky, he believes over a period of time, humanity would have learned, or at some point the fighting would no longer be necessary. But Namor just tells him here like, hey man, air breathers are going to keep fighting till this world's destroyed. And that's where Bucky calls him out like, hey man, Atlantis isn't war free. You fought us, you fought each other, you fought Wakanda. And Namor's like, oh, that's justified. And then when Bucky asks about T'Challa, Namor says here, like the cat that he is, T'Challa has his own plans. And right there, I'm just like, man, say what you really feel. Because I feel like he wanted to word that differently. But Bucky can't help but to feel like that something's different this time. And he's not sure if it's because Steve's not here, but he feels like they're heading into darkness. And that's where Namor's like, man, it's dark underwater, but I see just fine. But then he gets a little more serious and he's like, we invaders know war. And we know how to push through war's darkness towards light. And it makes for a really nice moment because Bucky's like, for Steve. And Namor's like, for Atlantis. And that Rogers guy. And now when they go back to the others, we find Peter expressing his discomfort with Tony. Because they're getting into a war involving multiple countries. Because to Peter, as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, he feels like this is all above his pay grade. And he knows that they all go in big, the fallout could be crazy. And now Tony's like, I get it. But if Cap asked you to join this mission, would you join? And Peter's kind of like, yeah, I probably would. No offense. And then when Tony says here, none taken, genuinely, we'd all follow Steve into hell and back. That part kind of has me thinking like, does he know? But then he goes on to tell Peter that he doesn't want him to do something that he's not comfortable with. And Peter makes a good point here because he's like, if everyone's out there, who's going to be protecting people here? So Tony tells him it's okay. Really, stay here. So Spider-Man can protect the people of New York. We've got more than enough firepower. And when Tony says this, David Colton walks up with a new fit. So Tony introduces Spider-Man to David Colton. And when they shake hands, Peter's like, good to meet you. So David tells him same. Been following your work for years. You help people. Even when you're down and getting kicked, you still help. We need more like you. And that's where Peter's like, thanks. And I imagine Peter's just a little confused because he's not sure if David means they need more people like him who help people or more people who are down and getting kicked. So he's still trying to figure that out. But then it's here where Reed gets a call from the Madam Secretary General. And she's basically like, I know you over there with some other super people. And Reed confirms that he is. So then she's like, good, so I can talk to you all at once. And that's where she tells him here, as you know, Operation United Strike is underway. 5 countries, including yours, taking on Ross and his cronies. Reports have the initial attacks going well. The people are winning. I know you're planning to join in, to ignore international law, because it's what you do. I'm here to tell you that if you do, if you take away mankind's authority once again, I will do everything in my power to take you in and make you accountable for once in your lives. So that's where Tony steps in and he's like, yeah, appreciate all that. And we'll take it under advisement just before hanging up on her. Because again, Tony's Iron Alert system has told him differently. And right there, Carol's like, well, we've been advised. What do we say now? And Tony tells her, I think I speak for all of us when I say I have some words for the Secretary General, the coalition, and especially for Ross, the beast who put our friend, Steve Rogers, the best man I know, into a coma. 2 words, in fact. Avengers, assemble. Because yeah, Tony's not just about to let the Red Hulk smash the homie and get away with it. He's bringing the Avengers so they can smash back, with the hopes of David Colton smashing Ross even harder. But also with Tony using the Iron Alert system, he knows that Ross is way more dangerous than the world thinks he is. So for that reason, the heroes have got to go in big. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.